Yes, you're listening to the Total Cricket Podcast. I hope you're having a good one. Sachin here, as always, to take you through the latest happenings in the world of cricket. And today, I'm looking at the fourth ODI between England and the West Indies. But first, there's only one place to start, and that is with Ben Stokes. Wow, that incident, nothing short of incredible. Ben Stokes, what have you done? Now, Ben Stokes as a cricketer is fantastic. He seemingly cannot put a foot wrong. One of the best, if not the best all-rounder in world cricket. But his behaviour, both on and off the field, leave a lot to be desired. On the field, he's only one demerit point away from a suspension. He's had a lot of altercations, verbal jousts with Rabada, Sabir Rahman, Marlon Samuels, and off the field, he's had his fair share of incidents too. He's punched lockers, he's been arrested, he's been caught out drinking after curfew. These are some of the things that Ben Stokes has done in his time, and you would have thought by now he would have learned from his mistakes and he would have mellowed with age, but that is not the case. Another, and probably the biggest incident in Ben Stokes' cricketing life. He has been arrested after he was involved in a brawl outside a pub in Bristol. He was seen throwing punches at a couple of guys. Now, whether or not he was defending a friend or whether the other person started it, that is not the point here. The point is, how has he gotten himself into this situation in the first place? You've got to be crazy. He's the vice captain of the English cricket team. You expect him to uphold high standards as a person who is representing the country in a privileged position. And he has gone out and put himself in a terrible situation. Whether that was morally the right thing to do in the heat of the moment, that is not the point of this exercise. What on earth are you doing there in the first place, Ben Stokes? That is my question. And the worst thing is, this is not a one off. He has a history, Ben Stokes. And now the question becomes for England, the ECB, do you sack him for the Ashes? Now, clearly, there is a conflict of interests here. They've suspended him until further notice, yet he hasn't been stripped of the vice captaincy or his place in the Ashes squad. So clearly, this is proving a very difficult decision for the ECB hierarchy. Think about this now. If this was any other player, almost any other player, they would have been sacked immediately, gone. But Ben Stokes is one of England's most important players on that team. Without him, they have next to no chance of going to Australia and winning the Ashes. He was their best player the last time they toured Australia 4 years ago, and he's a much better player now than he was then. Without him, they are almost certainly not going to win that series. ECB know that the Ashes, particularly in Australia, is the most important series for England, and that is why they are having this struggle at the moment. I wonder what Kevin Peterson must be thinking now. He was sacked from the team a few years ago for being a disruptive figure in the dressing room. Now, the incidents they've been involved in are completely different. However, the result is still a huge distraction and a disruption in that team environment. And as such, you would think that Ben Stokes will be, and may I add should be, sacked from the England team if the ECB have any integrity to them. They would be quite hypocritical, to say the least, if they were to give Stokes a lifeline. So personally, I think that Stokes should be sacked. What do you guys think? I'm very interested to know. But ultimately, this whole thing has basically rendered the rest of this West Indies series redundant, if it already wasn't. All English eyes are firmly on the Ashes and this incident. But turning our attention to the game, England won this one by 6 runs on the Duckworth-Lewis method, and in doing so, they clinched the series. And I'll begin with the team news, and the West Indies, they made just the one change, which saw Alzari Joseph coming back into the team in the place of Devendra Bishu. As for England, they made 3 changes to their team, 2 of them enforced, Ben Stokes and Alex Hales dropping out. Hales wasn't involved in the brawl, but he was at the venue. Sam Billings and Jason Roy took their places, and also Jake Ball came in for David Willey. Now let's get into the recap. And England, they won the toss and elected to field with rain in the air. But the West Indies, they put up an incredible show, batting first 356 for 5 they made, including an absolutely incredible 176 off 130 deliveries, an incredible innings from Evan Lewis that was cruelly cut short when he suffered an injury to his ankle. It was a shame to see because he looked good for a double century. He got some able support from Jason Muhammad, he made 46, and particularly Jason Holder, 77 off 62, and those two shared a 168 run stand together for the 5th wicket. That was a game changer. The English bowling, not much to talk about. Chris Wokes was the pick of the bowlers. He took 3 for 71. All the other bowlers got carted around. Liam Plunkett and Rashid, the only others to take a wicket. England, in reply, they started off very well, thanks to Jason Roy. Welcome return to form for him, 84 off the 66. They did lose their way a little bit, but Joss Buttler and Moeen Ali came together, and their blitz, 77 runs in 8 overs, that got England above the Duckworth-Lewis pass score, and when the rain came, they were 6 runs ahead of that, which meant that they won the game as there was no further play. It was disappointing to see the game stop then. I think it would have been very interesting if the game had continued. Certainly England were not certain winners given that they had lost 5 wickets. But I think all in all, looking at it, they only needed a further 95 runs in 15 overs, so the run rate wouldn't have been an issue. And they have a deep batting lineup. Chris Wokes and Adil Rashid were yet to bat. So I think that the Duckworth-Lewis result ultimately made sense. The West Indian bowling, only one wicket taker for them, and that was Alzari Joseph, who took a 5 for. None of the other bowlers got in amongst the wickets, and that was all she wrote for this one. But now let's get into the breakdown, and I'll start with the West Indies innings. Chris Gale, he fell early for just the 2 runs. This is what you get with Chris Gale. He is a slow starter more often than not, doesn't move his feet a great deal, and a lovely ball from Chris Wokes took his outside edge through to Joe Root. When he was out, it would have appeared that the West Indies cause was sunk, but Evan Lewis, wow, 176 off 130 deliveries, the 4th highest ODI score by a West Indian. This was an exhibition in modern ODI batting, and I was pleased to see Evan Lewis finally put it together in ODIs. He's been incredible for the West Indies in 2020 internationals, one of only a few players who has 2 centuries to his name in that format. This was also his 2nd ODI century, but coming into this series, he only averaged 25 in ODIs. His issue was that he wasn't adapting his game. He was basically playing like it was a 2020 international in ODIs. He wasn't building an innings, but that is exactly what he did this time around. Great to see him learning from his previous mistakes. The best feature of his innings, I think, was the 46 singles that he hit. In the middle overs, he scored the odd boundary, but what he was doing for the most part was just rotating the strike. That's what the West Indies batsmen as a whole have to do more of. I think that their ODI batting tempo is not where it needs to be if they want to be a better team in this format. We know they're such good power hitters. That's why they're the most successful team in 2020 international history. And we saw that in this game with Evan Lewis and Jason Holder. But their issue is the other parts of batting, rotating the strike, running aggressively between the wickets, building an innings. That tempo, it's not just a one-paced game like 2020's. You need to have a different tempo in ODI batting. Start with a bang in the power play overs, then just knock the ball around in the middle with the odd boundary, and then at the end, you can go big again. That's what the West Indies need to do more of. And as I've said before, for the most part, it's either a boundary or a doff ball. They need to be a lot more proactive, particularly in the middle overs, rotating the strike. That is the biggest thing that the West Indies have to improve on. But it was good to see Evan Lewis show improvement in that facet. We saw towards the end of his innings, his power hitting come to the fore. Brute force. He's not a big guy, but he is so strong. He can hit it to all parts of the ground. This was a fantastic innings. I think he was going to get a double century, but unfortunately, that injury denied him the chance. But this was a breakthrough innings for Evan Lewis in the ODI format. He is a star for this West Indies team. So the future is not all doom and gloom for the West Indies. There are some promising players coming to the fore. And speaking of promising players, Shai Hope, unfortunately, didn't get runs again in this game. Hasn't been able to get the runs in this series, although he's looked good. He's just found ways to get out, but this time he got an absolute beauty from Chris Wokes that he got a tiny edge through to Josh Butler. I think with Shai Hope, it's just a case of persistence for the West Indies, but hopefully in the last ODI, he can score some runs. Marlon Samuels, I think this innings illustrated why Marlon Samuels should not be playing for the West Indies. There's a reason he was dropped. I think that this series should be his last for the West Indies. Not only is he 36 years old, but he's not performing with the bat. In the field, he's poor. I think his attitude more than anything is not up to the mark, and the West Indies should not be picking him after this series. He shuffled across his stumps, and he was trapped in front from Chris Wokes. He didn't look like he had a plan at all in this innings, 1 off 7 deliveries, soaking up a lot of dot balls, as he usually does. The guy simply is not performing, and he's not showing the necessary attitude, I think, that this team needs if it wants to improve. Jason Mohammed once again struggled with his strike rate. He did hang around at a time when the West Indies were teetering at 33 for 3, to be fair to him, but 46 off 71. There was no acceleration from Jason Mohammed, only the 4 boundaries as well, no sixes. So he's not a power hitter, Jason Mohammed, and yet he wasn't able to rotate the strike well at all. The fact that you don't have either of those qualities tells me that he shouldn't be in this team. I think he's a placeholder for when some of their more experienced players come back, like Darren Bravo, Dwayne Bravo, Andre Russell. Incredibly though, he will be captain in the next game because Jason Holder, he will be flying back home for personal reasons, so maybe he can go out with a bang. Speaking of the man himself, Jason Holder played an excellent innings, his highest score in ODIs, and this was a perfect demonstration of why I think this guy is a very talented player. He can be a good all-rounder for many years, I think. He's certainly not a tail ender. I liked that he promoted himself up to 6 in the order. Definitely proved to be a good decision. He has some serious power, but he combines that with great finesse. He's got a beautiful cover drive, but he also hits fantastically well over the top down the ground, as well as square of the wicket with that pull shot particularly. Jason Holder can be a devastating batsman, and I really hope that he can develop into a quality all-rounder. I've said many a time the burden of the captaincy doesn't help him, but he's doing a good job for this West Indies team, and I hope that he can fulfill his potential. Rovman Powell, he came in after Evan Lewis retired hurt, and he hit a few lusty blows, 28 off 15. This guy is a clean striker of the ball. He doesn't have a flattering record in any format, to be quite honest, but his talent is clear. The issue is that he hasn't faced a lot of deliveries in any of the innings that he's played, so it's difficult to judge him as anything more than a big hitter at the moment. So hopefully we see Rovman Powell sooner rather than later play some more substantial innings. But yes, an excellent showing from the West Indies, as I said, showcasing their power hitting ability, and there was also some improvement in their middle overs play. But there still is more to come, I feel. As for England's bowling, they did struggle. Now, admittedly, once again, this pitch was very flat at the Oval, didn't offer anything for the bowlers. Hard, fast, came onto the bat beautifully, so it was a tough job for the bowlers. But I think all the bowlers could have bowled better. Chris Wokes bowled really well up top. I think the best he's bowled in the games that he has played this summer was getting the ball to swing a little bit, to nip off the surface, and he accounted for the West Indies' first 3 wickets. He took a little bit of tap at the back end of the innings when Holder and Lewis were going, but then basically every bowler did. So it was good to see Chris Woakes come back to some kind of form. Jake Ball coming into the team, I think he's a better bowler than David Willey, and he did a reasonable job, I think, even though he went wicketless. He didn't get thrashed, went for 68 in his 10 overs, but he's got something about him, Jake Ball. He's got a good Yorker, he can bowl a slow ball, he can also bowl a bouncer. These are the kind of variations that you need as a fast bowler in ODIs. On unhelpful conditions, you have to try and make things happen. You have to stop the batsman's momentum, break up their rhythm, and Jake Ball has those tools to do that. Liam Plunkett similarly has all the tools coming off the back of a 5-wicket haul in the last game. Just got the 1 wicket here. He bowled decently, I thought, as well. At the death, he was quite good, restricted the West Indies somewhat. He still took a bit of tap. But again, for all the reasons above, you have to cut the bowlers a little bit of slack. Liam Plunkett is England's best fast bowler in ODIs at the moment. Moeen Ali, he got absolutely thrashed. 70 runs he conceded off 9 overs. He actually started off quite well, and then he took an absolute pasting late on from Evan Lewis and Jason Holder. But I think this game illustrated the importance of Ben Stokes, the cricketer, to this English team. They didn't have the same flexibility they usually do in the bowling. They didn't have the 6 bowlers this time. They only had 5, and as such, when Moeen was getting battered, they had to continue to bowl him, even deep in the innings, when you almost knew it was going to end in tears. But again, with Moeen, I've said in ODIs, doesn't spin the ball a great deal, and when you just throw the ball up there in the slot, more often than not, the batsmen are going to hit you for 6. I think Moeen needs to perhaps develop a little bit more as an ODI bowler, drag that length down a little bit, perhaps fire it in a little bit more. Don't just put it in that slot for the batsmen. Don't make it easy for them. Adil Rashid had a rare off day. He didn't bowl too badly, but he still went for 67 runs. He got just the 1 wicket, but Adil Rashid has been the leading wicket taker in ODIs since the 2015 World Cup, so I'll give him a little bit of slack for 1 bad game. We know what a fantastic bowler he can be. But now, looking at the England innings, and Jason Roy, boy did he take his opportunity that was afforded to him through the suspension of Alex Hales. You thought when Johnny Bairstow got that century in the first ODI that it would be a long time until Jason Roy got another look in, but he got lucky and he took his chance. 84 off 66 for Jason Roy. This was a vintage Jason Roy innings. Fearless, so aggressive, all the shots. That was what was missing from Jason Roy before. He was lacking in confidence, he was tentative, and I think that the break that he had helped to refresh his mind, and he looked a different play. He looked like the old Jason Roy. He looked like the pre-Champions Trophy Jason Roy in this one. Hopefully more of the same, and he may get an extended opportunity now with Alex Hales being suspended. He can be a great player for England, I think, so hopefully he can continue to take his chances. Johnny Bairstow didn't get going in this one, 39 off 51 deliveries for him. It didn't look so bad because Jason Roy was going so well at the other end, but Bairstow struggled to find the boundary in the power play overs. That's probably the one criticism you could say of him as an opening batsman. He's not necessarily a power hitter, not someone who can find the boundary at will, but I still think that Bairstow deserves an extended opportunity at the top of the order. It was only a couple of ODIs ago that he got a century in this position. We know he's a class batsman, and as I said, with Alex Hales being suspended, I think we'll see him also given an opportunity, and I expect a batsman the caliber of Johnny Bairstow to take that opportunity. Joe Root only managed 14 or 15. He was caught behind off the bowling of Alzari Joseph, much like Jason Roy and Johnny Bairstow. But a rare failure for Joe Root. I'm not going to read too much into this, I don't think. Owen Morgan, he held out at fine leg. He absolutely creamed a hook shot off Alzari Joseph, but he went straight to Kyle Hope. It was a fantastic catch from Hope. He timed his jump to perfection and took the catch very nicely indeed. But I think that was a little bit unlucky for Owen Morgan, and when you're out of form, sometimes things just don't go your way. He looked really good early on, but couldn't quite make the start count. But as I've said before, Owen Morgan needs runs under his belt. Sam Billings, tough gig for him, being drafted into the squad at pretty short notice, and he came in a difficult situation. England were losing wickets at regular intervals, and he was caught for two by Chris Gale off Alzarri Joseph once again. What a catch by Chris Gale. I didn't think he could move that well at the age of 37. When do you see Chris Gale move in the field? Even in his batting, he rarely moves, but he took an incredibly athletic catch diving to his right at full stretch. Chris Gale, that was great to see the old man still able to pull off some great feats like that. But for Billings, I can't read much into it. Just a one-off game he's been thrown into. I imagine he'll get an opportunity in the next game, so hopefully he can take that one a bit better. Josh Buttler, though, got some much-needed runs, 43 off 35 for him. He is a fantastic batsman. You could argue he's the perfect ODI batsman for the modern era. That 360 game, particularly that ramp shot he plays, how do you defend that as a bowler? It's impossible. He puts the bowlers in such awkward situations because he's able to maneuver the field so expertly, and for that reason, he is a devastating batsman. He played fantastically and is a key cog in this English batting lineup. Moeen Ali followed on from his breathtaking century the other day with another very, very good innings. 48 off 25, a few lusty blows yet again. Moeen Ali just keeps on defying the critics, keeps on defying the limitations put on him. This guy can hit boundaries at will now, it seems. What a player he is turning out to be. He's always been a very talented batsman. He's really starting to deliver on a consistent basis. Great to see from Moeen. And I must mention, good game awareness from Josh Buttler and Moeen Ali. They saw that the Duckworth-Lewis pass score was getting a little bit steep. They had to go big with the rain in the air, and that's what they did in their partnership. 77 runs off 8 overs, and they were just in front of the rain when the rain did eventually come down. So great game awareness and great game management from those two to guide England to victory. Now looking at the West Indies bowling, pretty bleak viewing for the most part. Jerome Taylor struggled once again with his line and length. He's just not disciplined enough, Jerome Taylor. He's offering far too many loose balls, and at his old age, I'm wondering how much longer the West Indies will persist with him. Jason Holder, he didn't have a particularly bad day with the ball, I thought, given the conditions. He bowled well enough, but at that pace, if you don't bowl it in the right spot, you're going to get hammered, and that's what happened a little bit today for Jason Holder. Alzarri Joseph was the big plus, I think. Coming into the team, took a 5-wicket haul. He was able to get the ball to talk, to see him off the wicket particularly, and he accounted for all 5 English wickets. I thought he bowled really nicely. If you remember the nightmare that he had at Lords in the first test, and now in his first game since then, what a comeback from Alzarri Joseph. He's still so young, only 20 years of age. This guy's a real talent for the West Indies. Watch out for Alzarri Joseph in the future. Miguel Cummins, he struggled once again. He's been battered in this one-day series pretty consistently, and this game was more of the same, much like Jerome Taylor, offering far too many loose balls. You have to be more disciplined than that. Ashley Nurse, he only bowled 3 overs in this one, and he got absolutely carted. 39 he conceded off the 3 overs. This guy shouldn't be in the ODI team, I believe. He doesn't offer anything as a bowler. He doesn't spin the ball. He's way too easy to hit, and while he can hit a few blows down the order, he's not a good enough batsman to be considered an all-rounder. Much like Jason Mohammed, I think he's a placeholder for Sunil Narayan. But that was it for the game. England clinching the series, 3 games to zip. And boy, that last game now is rendered completely redundant, not only by the fact that England have already won the series, but particularly with the dark cloud of the Ben Stokes incident looming large. I think for England that all eyes are on the Ashes and their current issues, and the West Indies, this is about pride. Can they register a win in this series? But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, you can check it out on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. The links to all those platforms can be found on the Twitter page. But until next time, thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.